You're listening to the Wrigleyville Nation podcast. Season ticket holders and lifelong fans with neighborhood ties discuss Cubs news and neighborhood happenings. Here's your hosts, Jeremy and Pat.
Hello and welcome to the Wrigleyville Nation podcast. This is episode 418 of the podcast. My name is Jeremy Deemer and I'll be your host. I'm joined as always by my co-host. He's my cousin and he's high atop Wrigleyville tonight. How's it going, Pat?
It's going well, Jeremy. Thanks for asking.
Well, it was a beautiful day in Chicago today, and the Cubs avoided a sweep against Seattle. We will recap the week that was. We will talk about the Cubs winning the series against the White Sox. We will talk about what was almost a disaster in Seattle, dropping 2 of 3, still not great.
What would that make them for the week? Would that be 3-3?
3-3 as predicted by you, Pat. I was an optimist. I thought the Mariners were a lot worse from the games I've seen this year than.
I feel like they are, but that doesn't really matter. You know, it's
no,
baseball.
It seems like there's one guy. There's always one guy. When the Cubs are playing a series, it's always one guy that's just a killer. And we had it again here. We'll get into that. We'll talk about all the news. We'll preview the week that will be to help us unpack all things Cubs this week. You know him from his work at NBC Chicago and, of course, his appearances here on this podcast. James Neveau, thanks for taking time out to talk Cubs with us tonight.
Disaster in Seattle is one of my favorite romantic comedies, and we certainly got to live that this weekend. I mean, yeah, that the one guy always being kind of the pain in the butt. Isn't it hilarious that the Cubs literally started the week with Pete Crow Armstrong making a weird kind of history and then ended it by Randy Arozarena doing basically the exact same thing? Like, that's pretty much the 2026 Cubs in a nutshell, it feels like.
Yeah, if I never see a Rosarina again, it'll be too soon.
I'd like to see him in left field next year at Wrigley, 81 times.
Okay, all right. That I could go for. The Cubs, we talked last week about the Monday night game that we both attended for the White Sox series, so we recapped that in depth last week with
One final note on that, Jeremy. My wife reminded me I need to explain that was, and this is not just her saying it, it's several people in our building, the loudest non-playoff rendition of Go Cubs Go they've heard in the 20 years we've lived here in this building. That 19 technically, but you get
to know. Yeah.
Drift. Yeah.
The Cubs went on to win the second game of that series.
By the grace of Bregman go I, right? I feel like that second game just demonstrated what I said during the first game, which is what a foolhardy move it was not to walk PCA to get to Suzuki, because Suzuki in the 9th or 10th inning of a game is really not the guy you want up at the plate. And in the second game, with 2 men on and 1 out, Suzuki, of course, fouled out to first base, and
he went 0 for 5.
Yeah, but that out was so critical in it. And you thought to yourself, gosh, thankfully he wasn't up at the plate the day before. And then, if PCA is Batman, his Robin now is Alex Bregman, who got the base hit to win the game. And it was one of those moments where I had deja vu, of course, because Carson Kelly was at second base. He seems to be at second base and at the end of potential walk-off games a lot. He doesn't always make it to home running, but this time he did, thanks to the Savannah Banana in center field, who threw the ball.
What a throw.
Yeah.
I mean, comic.
It landed somewhere between home and first, but it was just the kind of the throw and the margin of error that Kelly needed in order to safely secure the winning run. And all was great in the universe, really, at that point. It was before the great decline in American civilization that began the following day.
Yeah, we definitely saw the week peak with another walk-off Cubs victory against the White Sox.
Very similar to last week, by the way, when they went 3-3 and started off 2-0, I might add.
That is true. And the Cubs did drop the finale of the series, getting shut out 3-0.
Total sleeper, although Holmes pitched quite admirably, I thought. Clay Holmes.
I was going
to pitcher.
Yeah, James, your thoughts on Clay Holmes and his appearances so far for the Cubs?
I mean, considering how some of the other guys have been doing in their appearances, specifically Ryan Zephyr-Quas, who just has already boggled my mind enough times for an entire season. I think that Holmes has been a very nice addition to this rotation, and not a moment too soon considering some of the struggles that this team has kind of started to have. I'm not going to push the panic button on certain guys, and I don't want to start getting into names because I know we're probably going to get into it later in this podcast, but just as the season's gone on and the Cubs just continue to have that depth of their rotation tested, going out and getting a guy that you can theoretically rely on every fifth day was so important. And they took a couple of shots at it with him and with Kevin Gausman. And I've liked what I've seen from Holmes so far. I'm certainly not going to be one of the guys, throwing, Kevin Gausman out just yet. I still feel like there's definitely good tread still on those tires, and he's definitely a guy that I think you can still rely on at times. But especially with some of the performances recently by this rotation, seeing a guy like Clay Holmes pitch the way that he did definitely made me a little bit happier than I would have been otherwise.
James, I will tell you right now, the Cubs will be throwing Gausman out come playoff time for game 2 as a starting pitcher at the rate they're going, right?
Well, as long as it's not Shota Imanaga, and I would say maybe it'll be Ben Brown. Depends on how quickly he can come back too, because he's starting a rehab assignment apparently this coming week if all goes according to plan out in Arizona.
Don't rush it, Ben.
That's right. Cubs lose 3-0, and what a difference a week makes. We were just on this podcast last week after the first win against the White Sox saying Cubs are 3 games behind the Brewers for the division. What? Somehow losing this game, going to Seattle, dropping 2 of the next 3, puts them 6.5 back at the time of this recording. We'll get into that. Just let's get to this Seattle frustrating games, starting with the Friday game, losing in extra innings. 6-5 is the final. Pat, another frustrating extra inning performance here.
It certainly was. Cubs, of course, out-hit Seattle in that game. Had 4 home runs in the game.
Bregman staying hot.
Bregman had 2 homers. Pete had a homer. Even Ian Happ had a home run. You shouldn't waste those. Boyd was not great, but ultimately, somehow, he gave up 4 runs in 6 innings on 8 base runners. It wasn't it wasn't like he got completely crushed. It was just the timing of it. He gave them 4 of them up in the second inning. That was frustrating, but we got to see Palencia come back and Ray and Webb all pitched fine. I mean, it was a weird game because you're like, well, the Cubs out hit them by 4. The Cubs had 4 home runs, so it wasn't like their hits went completely to waste. Cubs pitching wasn't terrible. How did they lose this game? And the Seattle series is sort of the mirror opposite of the White Sox series, right? Cubs below the first game in the 10th inning. Then, and we'll see, the progression was sort of the mirror opposite of the White Sox. James's top friend here of the top Cub fan, I guess. You're the top fan of Ryan Zephyr-John, is that right?
Yeah.
And
really associating him with Jose Quas really shows how much I love that guy.
Yeah, he's really bad, right?
I don't know if that is the way I would describe him, but he certainly has not been a guy that I would trust in any sort of a high leverage situation. And I will say,
but they got him exactly for the high leverage situation. So
they got him so that they didn't have to continue running Jacob Webb out every single day. They got him so that they could ease Daniel Palencia back in. And clearly neither of those things is going to happen.
I was going to say, last I checked, Webb still pitches every day also. And this was Zephyr-John, since coming to the Cubs, has been a far worse pitcher than he was before getting here. He's got an ERA of like 7.50 or something like that, and gives up a lot of home runs apparently now. It's had he pitched anywhere near expectations or just the way he had pitched with the Angels, the Cubs would probably have 2 more wins at this point. So it's frustrating, right? I was pretty certain in the 10th inning when he rolled out onto the mound. I didn't think this was going to go particularly well. Interesting play, I guess, the base hit to win the game to center field because there were 2 outs. Pete raced up to get it on one bounce because had he been able to get the force out at second, the Cubs could have gotten out of the inning, which I was like, oh, didn't think about that. And yet there was no one covering second base because with Dansby Swanson out, who knew we'd say this, the Cubs sort of middle infield combo of Ramirez and now Horner at short just isn't quite syncing or operating on all cylinders here. They've kind of botched a couple double plays. Horner had an error. Nobody was covering second on that play. Not that it may have made a difference, but someone should have, right? Or you would have hoped somebody would have at least been in the vicinity. It's just, in fact, earlier in that game, and I think it was in the first game too, Cubs had opportunities to turn a double play that would have prevented runs, and they didn't. And I guess that's when we talk about the Cubs' historically great defense and Dansby Swanson, and we lament his poor offensive production much of the time. We do sort of forget the invisible, like automatic, surefire defense, which saves the Cubs a lot of runs.
And I will say about that game too, like I think it cannot go unsaid that they went 1 of 16 with runners in scoring position in that Friday game. So yeah, you had the defensive miscues, and I think you could ask why the Cubs outfielders were playing at the depths they were playing at on the walk-off hit, kind of like we had in the instance, I believe it was in Saturday's game too, where the number 9 hitter ahead of Arozarena just kind of dumped the ball out there. And it's like, why the heck was he playing so far? Why is Suzuki playing so far back when the Cubs, are up 2 runs? Like you don't have to play no doubles in that situation, especially against a guy with an OPS of like 550. It just was very bizarre decision-making from a defensive perspective. But again, I'll go back to, you're not going to win a lot of games when you only go 1 for 16 with runners in scoring position. And I know that's a stat that sometimes gets kind of blown out of proportion just because you do want to have as many opportunities as possible with runners in scoring position, but the Cubs could not buy a clutch hit during that game. And so I think that, yeah, it's easy for me to kind of dunk on Zephyr John with how bad he's been, but that's the stat that I will definitely point to first and foremost.
I mean, look, when you're up 4-2 with 2 outs in the 9th inning and nobody on base, you got to win that game. And I know that Jacob Webb's been great all season, and it was his first miscue since June 21st or whatever. So, like, that's fine, I guess. But, yeah, it came at a really bad time. That's all I can say. Yeah. But David Peterson pitched well.
But again, like you said, Webb's been good. And then, you only still scored 4 runs. And then Randy Arozarena just did Randy Arozarena stuff, man. And I will say the pitch he threw to Arozarena wasn't the worst pitch he's ever thrown, but that dude just covered that pitch and drilled it. So, it's definitely one that stings to lose. But to me, losing on Friday was even worse just because of the fact you had those ample opportunities to blow that game open, and they just didn't do it.
And you hate to waste a Michael Busch home run. Those are rare. So when that happens, another Bregman home run. Yeah, no, these were super frustrating games back to back. I'm sure White Sox fans felt the same way earlier in the week with the 2 losses. But that doesn't mean we have to relive their life experience like 2 days later. That seems
or fight about it.
Fresh, yeah.
The Cubs again lost on Saturday, 5-4. Another. This was, you mentioned Peterson pitching well. 6 innings, 2 earned runs. There's a guy who's been incredibly important since getting him from the Mets. He's eating up a ton of innings for you. He's doing
pitching
a good
fairly
job.
well,
Yeah. And
well, thank God they pulled him from the rotation for Edward Cabrera. That was a stroke of genius.
They worked Palencia back, right, by letting him pitch in like the 7th inning, but you can't do that for Cabrera. Okay, sorry,
yeah. I just got a middle finger or a blister on my middle finger just from this conversation. Sorry.
Yeah, one if not both of those guys will be in the bullpen for the playoffs, for Peterson and Yeah, and just I think frustrating continues to be the word. This was going into that ninth inning, and you got Webb out there. You mentioned Webb's pitching every day. Here he comes out of here again, and this time also doesn't have it, and gives up the 3 earned runs, and the Cubs lose again. We head to the Sunday game, where everything got right. The Cubs avoid the sweep in spectacular fashion.
It was weird for a while, though. Like up 7-2, the Cubs were still being out hit in that game, I think, because the Cubs walked. They had like 8 walks and a couple hit batters or something. It was just they walked the bases loaded. I've almost, I don't know if I've ever seen this before. Maybe I have, but Bryce Miller from Seattle walked the bases loaded in 2 separate innings. Wasn't taken out of the game.
No.
Even though the Cubs were up pretty big at the time. I mean, Cubs, thanks to grand slam by
Ian Happ's grand slam. Yes, that was the difference in the
Cubs are up by 5 runs. They left Miller in, and in the 5th inning, when he's throwing like 100 pitches, they let him walk the bases loaded again. And won't take him out. It was bizarre. I will say that the key play to that game though was the grand slam. Cubs are down.
Yeah. Well, Rosarina hits another home run, and you're like, there we go again.
Yeah. And then, there happened 2 strikes on him, bases loaded. And it's like, oh no, we're going to blow another opportunity here to score with, like 2 outs. And when I watched him swing at the pitch, I kind of turned my head because I thought it was a foul ball. And I thought it was really foul. I didn't realize it would be. But then it kind of straightened out, and it's like, oh, it might just be foul as opposed to a home run. And then it turns out it hit the pole, the foul pole, meaning it is a home run. But the way he took that swing, it was just such an odd. Go back and look at that if you haven't had a chance to see it. It was just sort of he swings like, almost like a miniature golf, like witch or something, swinging at a ball. And God help us, but he hit the home run and is on pace to set a personal record for most home runs in a season. Career year for Ian Happ in that department.
Never would have guessed that in a million years based on the number of times that dude has gone down flailing or grounded into double plays this season.
And how he's hit against lefties all season long. Yeah, that's here. The Cubs blow it out after the grand slam. James, we got to see more position players pitch. I know, Pat, you have some thoughts on
through the ire of Pat Hughes on the radio broadcast. He was really going in hard on that, how annoyed he was with the position players pitching. And I mean, to me, I've always felt like it's a problem that the only way you're going to solve it is one they'll never do, which is to expand the rosters even more than they have. And they're also not going to be like, all right, we're going to have mercy rules in baseball. Like, that's just never going to happen. So I honestly, I don't like it that much either, but I also just don't know if it's a problem that you can find a ready-made solution for. Like, that to me, I just, when I saw them, have a position player pitch in the 8th inning, I was just like, all right, I see how this is going to be. And I loved the response of the Cubs was to have Carson Kelly come out and pitch the 8th inning. Like, that to me, how often do you see a position player
9th inning? Yes,
a victory cigar pitcher? You never see it. I thought that was so funny.
Yeah, I mean, it makes baseball look silly. It makes the game look silly. We saw it with the Phillies against the Cardinals the other day when Schwarber hit the home run. I love Schwarber. I want him to hit as many home runs as he can, but we saw it last year with Nick Kurtz with the A's. He had this epic game, but I think 2 of the home runs were off position players. It cheapens the game. I mean, if we're going to say steroids is bad for the game, let's not do this. I do think that position players should be allowed to pitch. However, I don't believe they should be allowed to pitch until every other pitcher on the roster has already pitched that game. So there you go.
Does that include the starters?
Yes. So there you go. You really want to throw a position player out there that badly? Have at it. But everybody's got to get their 3 batters in first. So, in other words, not make it illegal, but by law de jure, but make it de facto illegal.
Before we go to too much further down the rabbit hole or proceed into other issues surrounding the team, should we be raising some alarm bells about Shota Imanaga? I mean, he gave
Have you read the outline, dude?
It's
literally
perfect.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Perfect
I was like, dude,
Just
like,
He's a
relax.
pro. It's a
We're
perfect
getting there.
segue. Yes.
yeah, I
there.
literally was like, dude, he didn't even make it out of the third inning today. And again, it's not like
before we moved to topic number 3, can I just say one last thing about this current topic that we're on?
Are you going to be reeling about position players, or is this about the rest of the game?
No. I will say that when I saw that Michael Rucker came into the game, I was actually happy for him. You know, he has not pitched in the majors in 2 years since he left the Cubs in 23. And so when they brought him in, and I looked at his stats, you know, as they brought him in, his ERA was like 4.30 at the time. And I'm like, well, it's nice to see that he's back on a major league roster. I always liked the guy. And then it turns out he gave up 7 earned runs and raised his ERA to 6.30. But at least he gave him up to the Cubs, right? So that's good. Let him, let him cook against somebody else. If he's on the roster tomorrow, which I hope he will be.
I will say, Pat, that I did read the outline, except I only read the Boyd portion of the next topic. So that's not me, man. I apologize.
That's all right. That's all right. I'm just playing with you.
No, and we should we should talk. Let's talk about those two first, and then we'll get into we'll look at the standings. The Imanaga, another short outing, as you mentioned. We've started to see in his last few outings giving up the home runs again, which is a strong concern, especially when you're talking about who's going to be a pitcher in your starting lineup for playoff appearances. We saw them not trust Shota at all last year when he started going down this path, and we see him showing a lot of similarities to last year at this time. What do you think, James? We'll start with you on what do you do with Shota?
Well, I mean, at this point right now, I don't think there's any way that you can just, summarily kick him out of the rotation. I feel like you're going to have to wait for at least 1 or 2 guys to get healthy again. But I also would not be opposed to the idea, if they wanted to, of having Javier Assad stay with the big league club and make starts and start to work Shota out of the bullpen. So you're not trying this like only in playoff time. You're not getting him associated with this role during the brightest lights. And especially if he's going to be giving up these home runs, like I feel like you need to be able to figure out whether or not he's going to be able to avoid that in short relief situations, because it just seems like every time that he pitches, you're always just kind of holding your breath and you're waiting for him to give up a home run. I mean, literally gave up a home run the first batter of the game today. Like, it seems like every time the Cubs either, get a lead or they start out with a 0 on the board in the first inning, that gopher ball is just a continuing concern from him. And I know that it's a concern for basically everybody on the team. The Cubs, I think, have given up like 195 home runs already or something this year, just some insanely astronomical number. But it's just a huge red flag for me, and one where you unequivocally cannot trust him in a big situation like a playoff game if he's going to be doing that. And so I feel like you almost owe it to yourself to be like, look, we can't afford to be put behind the 8 ball every time this guy starts, and we maybe have another option or two that we'll be able to kind of pull out during the remainder of the season. Why not just do it now and see what you've got with some of these other guys? And certainly, by the way, do not take David Peterson out of the rotation to keep Shota in it. That's the last thing I will say about it.
Yeah, before these last 2 starts, he had actually pitched fairly well in 9 of his previous 11 games. And I think we had talked on this podcast about what a benefit it would be for the Cubs if Shota and Boyd could both be healthy and fresh for the playoffs this year. But as soon as we said that, of course, put a curse on them. And Shota, is definitely struggling again. You just see it in the way he pitches. These last 3 games have just not been great for him. The White Sox game was a weird game because he actually was striking people out left and right. It's just that, his 2 home runs happen to be a 3-run and a 2-run home runs. That if you're going to give up home runs, they better be solo shots. That's all I can say. I think in this last game against Seattle, You notice that Counsell seems to be losing some patience maybe with him. He took him out after 2 innings. He'd given up 2 runs, 1 earned, but he'd given up, 5 hits and 2 walks. It wasn't like they were clean innings. He'd thrown 72 pitches. I think Counsell lets him go with another inning in a different situation, different time of year. Maybe if the Cubs weren't on a 3-game losing streak also at the time. But he took him out and he brought in Savali, who pitched 4 great innings for us. So that was a big pick-me-up. And Shota just didn't seem very happy when he got taken out of that game, the 3rd inning.
How many times can you realistically say that you were able to save bullets in your bullpen in a game where your starter didn't even make it out of the 3rd inning? Because that's exactly what Savali did today.
Yeah, he and Kelly. It was, but Imanaga doesn't usually show his dissatisfaction on the field, but he definitely, his body language did not look good today. So I hope he gets it right, because the Cubs need at least one of he and Boyd to pitch well, because in the playoffs you need 4 starters. Those are the rules. Unless you're the 2001 Arizona Diamondbacks and you just need Schilling and Johnson and one other guy.
Well, we have neither of those.
We do not, as it turns out.
So Pat, with Boyd and his recent performances, is there any concern from you on how he's doing, or is he got your vote of confidence going forward?
No, in fact, I had been very high on Boyd because he'd pitched so consistently well when he was healthy this year, since that opening day. And the last couple games have been real stinkers. The Cardinals game, terrible. Seattle game, not great again. I mean, 4 runs in 6 innings, but the way it happened wasn't super great. I'm gonna knock on wood and hope that he gets better, but I think with both Imanaga and Boyd, you worry about their I wouldn't call it their stuff, but just their movement and their ability to. They just don't look sharp, right? The pitches aren't sharp, fastballs aren't sharp, and they're key pieces to this. At least one of them has to be. And I thought Boyd would. I mean, there was a couple weeks ago, if you had asked me, I said he'll be the number 1 starter in the playoffs.
Yeah, and he had.
In fact, I think I did. So,
yeah, the problem last year was he ran out of gas, and he pitched more than he'd pitched in a long time, if ever. And this year he had injury stints that have kept him out of the lineup, and you're thinking, hey, if he comes back healthy, he hasn't pitched a ton. Like there's James, we were kind of thinking, hey, this could be we wouldn't have to worry about Boyd running out of gas, and we could see the best of Boyd going into the playoffs.
Yeah, who would have thought that playing with his kids and tearing up his knee would have been a potential benefit, right? Like that, you, as you said, keep innings off of the arm, but I am definitely I'm not going to say like bullish on Boyd, because I think that it's kind of silly to use terms like that, but I do have a little bit less concern about him than Shota, just because we saw exactly what happened with Shota last season. We've already seen so many of the alarm bells this season in terms of the things that he's doing that are kind of costing the team some runs. And so I think that Boyd, he seems like a guy that could probably get it locked back in and figured out, but obviously they're going to need him to do, a lot better than what he has been doing his last couple of times out, especially when you've got a stretch coming up where you're going to be playing Milwaukee a bunch of times. You've got Atlanta lurking on the schedule later in the season. Like they're definitely going to need him to kind of get right, because the division probably isn't going to be, a realistic goal at this point or whatever, but you still got to get to the dance. And the Cubs, with those 3 straight losses, they did kind of do themselves no favors, especially with how the Phillies have been surging lately, including today. We thought the Cubs giving up a 3-run lead or a 2-run lead with 2 outs in the 9th inning was bad. How about the Cardinals giving up a 4-0 lead with 2 outs in the 9th inning and losing 6-4 today against the Phillies? Like that, the Phillies all of a sudden have become the National League Boston Red Sox, and not good timing to lose 3 consecutive games.
No, the Cardinals are cooked. Too bad. But I think,
and yet they took 2 out of 3 from the Cubs at Wrigley, but we're not.
I know, which is really frustrating. My concern about Boyd is that we saw this last year, starting around mid-August. He sucked until until the lights went out in Milwaukee, basically. I mean, he actually pitched well in the very last game, game 5, but remember how he got crushed in that game before. But people, I think, forget how bad he was by bad, I mean how just not good he was. He wasn't, I mean, he was pretty bad. In September, his ERA was 5.31 last year, and in August, in the last 3 games, his last three starts there in 16 innings, he gave up 13 runs. That's really bad too. So he had a stretch of 7 bad starts to end the year heading into the playoffs, and I don't want that to happen again.
Let's talk about
so please talk to him about that, will you?
Yes, let's talk about the path to get to the playoffs. You mentioned the division that was within reach last week is now feeling out of reach at this point, as the Brewers have gone 7-3 in their last 10, as the Cubs go 4-6. Looking at the wild card standings, then the Cubs have something that seemed a lock also a week ago was that top wild card spot. Well, the worst that could happen is the top wild card spot. And yeah, here come the 9-1 Phillies in their last 10 games, while the Cubs were 4-6. So they are 2 games behind the Cubs at the moment. The Padres holding on to the 3rd wild card spot, with the Diamondbacks 2 behind them and the Marlins 4 games back.
It's hard for me to believe that Miami's actually still hanging around this race. Truly, it is.
Of course they are.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's the Marlins. Like, I would expect nothing less, but, at least it's not like, and Casey has 40 home runs this season or anything like that, because that would make the Edward Cabrera situation a lot worse if he was just, ripping the cover off the ball constantly.
Of the top 7 teams in the wild card hunt right now, Cubs, Phillies, Padres, Diamondbacks, Marlins, Cardinals, and Pirates, the Cubs have performed worse than all of them in the last 10 games. Cubs have lost ground to every team on that list in the last 10 games.
But they still, you know what? That's why you build the big lead up, though. It gives you that cushion.
Well, and when the Cubs go 4-6 and the Diamondbacks and Marlins and Cardinals and Pirates all go 5-5, I'm not worried. That's like a war of attrition. You could do that for the last 31 games of the season and you're fine. My concern is the Phillies, like you said, Jeremy, playing 9-1. They've made up 5 games on the Cubs. They're only 2 games back.
They made up a ton of games. They made up a ton of games on the Braves.
Yeah,
they're only 2.5 back of the Braves for the division there.
Cubs had a 7-game lead on the Phillies. I was thinking the Cubs were going to be able to just kind of cruise, those last couple of weeks, which would have been my preference. And now the Cubs, we're looking forward to playing against the Brewers 7 times. I don't know if I want to play the Brewers 7 times because I don't think it's going to help the Cubs win the division, but they're tough games that the Cubs could lose also, right? And I don't, although the Cubs only have a 4-game lead over Arizona, next week's going to be critical on that front. I don't think the Cubs are going to miss the playoffs, but boy, if you don't get that first seed, really sucks.
It's the hardest path.
It is the hardest path. Like the first seed is good because you get to play, another wild card team and you get to play them at Wrigley, right? But if you lose that and you're on the road either at Philly, where the Cubs swept them earlier this year. You remember in 2015 when the Cubs swept the Mets like 7 times or 7-0 until the playoffs, and they got. This is the exact same thing setting up this year. We beat the Phillies 7 times, right? Of course, that bodes poorly. But then being that second team, you're either on the road in that situation or you're the third team, and then you're on the road playing like at Los Angeles or at the Brewers or at the probably not the Brewers, but because their record's so good, but maybe at Atlanta. Just bad situations all over the place.
I will say if they were to end up as the 6th seed, God forbid, you would then avoid probably playing the Brewers if they end up winning the first seed, because I'm pretty sure it just goes that 3-6 winner plays the second division winner. Am I remembering that correctly? I don't think they reseed after the first round. So at least then you'd probably be able to avoid Milwaukee in the NLDS, which, I'm sure the Cubs would not be too terribly beat up about if they had to.
Not sure I'd want to play the Dodgers in a best of 3 at Los Angeles in the first round.
I mean, it's not like you have a great option either way. And if you want to win the
No.
World Series, you have to beat good teams. So
Yeah.
it's just kind of one of those things that it's like, well, just play whoever you got to play.
I'd actually like to win the World Series by starting by beating a bad team, and then saving my good team luck for the last two games.
I
series.
would definitely prefer if somehow the Phillies fell back down to earth and went back into that third wild card seed and the Cubs could play either the Padres or the Diamondbacks. I would feel a lot better about that.
The Padres or the Diamondbacks. Yeah, so the Padres especially should strike fear into no one. That team is not good. I don't know how they're still hanging around. The Diamondbacks we're going to find out, I think, next week what the state of the post-trade deadline state of the Diamondbacks looks like.
They're such a weird team, man. They were last season too. Remember, they traded away guys at the deadline and still made a run and almost made the playoffs. Like they're a really hard team to figure out.
Have they found Kettle Marte yet, or is he still missing in action?
So that situation cracked me up because I love that they said, oh, he just didn't show up. And it's like, well, how'd you have a guy ready to take his roster spot if you had no idea this was going to happen? Like, it just was all so bizarre.
And if he didn't show up, shouldn't you be calling local hospitals to see if he's okay? I mean, like, what do you mean didn't show up? That's not an answer.
Torey Lovullo did not seem like he had made any sort of phone call. He was just kind of like, nah, stuff happens. Yeah.
Can I state my proposition, which is that if the Cubs are going to play the Braves or Brewers, I'd like to play them in the second round in a 5-game series where Mizorowski and Sale can pitch maybe twice tops, but where the Cubs get some home games and maybe they can even out. I feel like I don't want to go up against teams with ace pitchers in 3-game series. That's my general rule of thumb.
You want to avoid facing Jacob Mizorowski in a best-of-3 series,
Yeah.
So I feel like I can sign on to that agreement.
And I also don't want to play Christopher Sanchez and then Luzardo and Wheeler again for the Phillies in a 3-game stretch either, especially on the road. If I had to play it, I don't want to do it on the road.
And you wouldn't imagine Kyle Schwarber wouldn't be just, licking his chops thinking about going up against the team that non-tendered him in the playoffs like that. Oof, talk about a disaster waiting to happen.
Like Wheeler and Luzardo and Sanchez are significantly better starting pitchers than anyone on the Cubs roster this year. And probably for a couple of years in some cases. Yeah. So let's not do that.
It's crazy to think that there's only 31 games left to go in the season. We are
20%
on the home stretch here, the dog days, if you will. 31 games to go. Let's talk about we talked a lot about the Cubs starters and position players last week on the podcast. Let's talk about the bullpen and the current state of the Cubs bullpen here with the 31 games to go, because you also have to figure out you have to get to the playoffs and at the same time figure out what your playoff bullpen is going to look like. Who's your guys? Palencia's back. He's one of our guys on this podcast. Great to see him back. You hope he can stay healthy and continue to play well. Zephyr John, we mentioned, he's been bad, and it makes us all a little nervous. The guy that I wanted to get your opinion on is Javier Assad. What can this guy do? Does he have to rescue kittens from a burning building for Craig Counsell to want to keep Assad around?
I don't even know if that would be enough, Jeremy.
Well, I mean, unless that eats up the rest of his options, I don't know if that would help him. And I think that's probably the only reason this keeps happening, right, is because he still has minor league options left. Like, I feel like at the end of the month when the rosters expand, he's going to be back anyway. But it just seems like he's getting the short end of the stick when it comes to roster calculus because of those options. I think that if they were having to DFA somebody, it certainly would not have been him, because I think somebody would have picked him up. So that's just what I keep telling myself. We just need to ride it out for another week, and then we'll have the ass man for the rest of the run here. But his versatility cannot go overstated. Like whether it's coming in long relief or making spot starts, like it's not like the dude has the craziest numbers of all time, but he does go out there and battle for them every single time they need him to and can do it in either situation. I feel like, to me, there's zero doubt in my mind that Javier Assad needs to be on your roster, and he needs to be on your roster when they get into the postseason as well. Like that just is that's a non-negotiable for me.
Pat, you concur?
Of course, yeah. I mean, look, regardless of his peripherals, he gets outs, and right now there are people in this rotation, or in both the rotation and the bullpen, who don't. So whether it's Thielbar or somebody else, I mean, look, Colin Ray and Savale, those guys are nice when they pitch well. I'm like, that's great, right? But on a playoff roster, I'm not. If you have to sweat having one of those guys not be on your roster, then then you've got bigger problems, I think. So
it's
yeah,
so fun. Cubs keep getting guys like Savale off the scrap heap who end up being really good, and then they give up actual tangible assets for a guy like Zephyr John, and he completely blows up. Like that is so the MO of the Cubs the last few seasons.
And not just Jefferson, but they also gave up real assets to get Cabrera. And where are we there? If I were to read you a list here, I'd like to get your perspective on this. Ready?
I like stories, Pat. Yes.
Okay, Jerry, Antoine Kelly, Zaxel Rios, Andrew Wantz, Charlie Barnes, Jake Woodford, and Ty Block, and Jaden Murray. What does that group have in common?
I don't know.
They've all pitched for the Cubs this year.
You made them all their names is what I was going to say, but then I was going to immediately follow that up with I think have they all been DFA'd by the Cubs at this point?
Yeah, and I was going to say they're all over 30, but actually Woodford's 29, so I guess I can't say that.
Old pitchers was where I was going. Yes.
Yeah, when the Cubs were in that desperate stage, and I mean desperate stage, they each pitched like 1 or 2 or 3 innings. I guess they all three innings or less. But when you look at the Cubs have now used 39 pitchers total this year.
They've already set a record this season, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that the record for most pitchers they've ever had in a season?
Yeah, and they've had guys. I mean, look, obviously we know in addition to Managa and Colin Ray and Boyd and Cabrera and Tyon and Peterson, right? Webb, Rollison, Trent Thornton, Thielbar, Hobie Milner, who hopefully comes back. We could use that's the guy I want to see come back and take a spot away from one of these other guys. Assad, of course, Ben Brown, if he could come back. I'm not quite as hopeful as you are, James, about his ability, certainly to start, but even to pitch. Let's hope that rehab stint moves a little bit quicker than otherwise. The rest of his rehab has been. Phil Maton, if we don't see him the rest of the year, that's fine. But then you get into the Ethan Roberts and Clay Holmes and Palencia and Gosman and Savale. Okay. And then it goes Tyler Ferguson, Gavin Howell, Jordan Wicks, we hardly knew you, Riley Martin, Bryce Wilson, poor Cade Horton, R.I.P., Zephyr John Pomerantz, was great to see again for a few minutes, Corbin Martin, Hunter Harvey, Vince Vasquez, and then the guys I already mentioned. And then Luke Little, the last guy on the list there. It's amazing that this team is on pace to win, 92 games with that pitching staff, frankly. I think. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. It seems like that's
it goes to show how good their offense has been at times and how stellar their defense has been. Truly, I feel like without those two elements, like this would be a far different story. And I don't think it can be overstated how valuable both of those things are.
And this offense has been extremely frustrating. The Cubs have several players who are among the league leaders in poorest performance with runners in scoring position. And you think to yourself, how in the world can this team score as many runs or do what they can with that offense? But then you have to remind yourself the reason why is because they get a lot of guys in scoring position, because they get a lot of guys on base. And that's something that, you can't underestimate. Like, yeah, you might have 3 of the 7 worst clutch hitters in baseball, but you've got a lot of guys who get on base just in general. So Eventually, some of them get home one way or the other. PCA usually hits them and drives them in, but yeah.
Well, we do have some of these players who have been injured, you've mentioned, on rehab assignments right now. Ben Brown, Milner, even James, do you think Justin Steele eventually makes his way back, or is that not something we should keep an eye on for this year?
For as optimistic as I am that they're going to get Ben Brown back in some sort of capacity, I don't see a scenario where these setbacks that Justin Steele has had, if he ends up getting onto the mound for the Cubs this year. I know he worked to live hitting this week, and I know there's been talk about him coming back to Chicago with the team after this upcoming road trip in Arizona, but I don't see the incentive in having him come back for like the last week or two of the season, because at this point, if you got Justin Steele, say, for the last like 10 days of the season, would you trust him enough to put him on the playoff roster right now? And I don't think the answer to that question is yes. And that's not a knock on Justin Steele. It's just he literally hasn't been on
time.
Major League mound for a year and a half.
He hasn't pitched in 16 months.
Exactly.
You know,
put him back in the mix. Like, I don't think that it's worth it at this point for a playoff team. Now, if they were out of playoff contention, I would feel differently, but I would much rather see them kind of try to get Ben Brown back into some sort of shape that he can pitch than Justin Steele, just kind of based on that.
In fact, he's only pitched one time in the last 22 months, right? If you want to look at it that way, because didn't he get hurt on opening day against the Rangers?
I think he made like 2 or 3 starts last season before he got the plug pulled. But I mean, basically, he at this point, if he doesn't pitch for the rest of this year, you can pretty much say he's missed 2 seasons.
Yeah, and I think the question becomes: do you risk next year for the possibility that he could pitch a couple innings out of the bullpen this year? And as you said, James,
you're also not going to have Cade Horton next year, lest we forget that.
Yeah, and like you said, and with no guarantee that he'd be successful, or that it's a tough ask. I think Ben Brown is tough enough in its own right. I don't know. I was very optimistic that Steele would come back for a long time until it just became obvious that it's less and less likely as the days go by. In the setbacks, I don't think Cabrera is going to pitch in the playoffs either. By the way, there's a hot take.
Wow,
they're going to want him in the bullpen. They're going to want him to.
They're going to want him in some capacity, and they're going to try to force that square peg into the round hole. It's going to happen.
Yeah. They shouldn't want him in that situation.
You're not wrong, Pat. But we've seen what happens when Cub fans are dead set against something, and they're like, "No, we know better."
Hey, maybe they do know better, but if they do know better, then they won't use them in the bullpen.
yeah, we know how that movie ends. The other news of the week: Cubs were announced to play in the Little League game next season. So in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, against the Toronto Blue Jays. So this will be a home game for the Blue Jays. They'll be part of the whole Little League festivities for the week.
Can I wear my Tony jersey again that I got the last time the Cubs played in happier times, right? 2017.
That's right.
Yeah, it's kind of honestly, like I felt like Players Weekend this year, like without the special edition jerseys, like am I the only one who just kind of feels like it's kind of half-assed now and isn't really into it? Like I know the guys love being able to use the special edition bats and the cleats and stuff. I feel like without the jerseys, it loses some of the verve.
Yeah, the jerseys were a big deal. Yeah.
I will also complain about one other thing with this, which is they're playing it on a Thursday night next year instead of a Sunday, which I find very odd. And it kind of happened with the
for the kids.
Well, yeah. I'm just saying, like the Field of Dreams game this year, I knew a lot of people who did not know it was being played at all because it was being played on a Thursday night. You can say part of that was the fact it was on Netflix, but the ratings for that game spoke for themselves. I feel like you're a lot better off playing that game on a Sunday when you get some more eyeballs than playing it on a random Thursday night, even if you get the exclusive 3-hour window or whatever it's going to be. I think it's like kind of a weird decision by Major League Baseball to do that.
Is Major League Baseball going to be playing games on Thursday nights next year?
Well, there's always that too.
See, I think all of this stuff, like when we talk about like the All-Star game next year and Cade Horton missing the season, I feel like it should just go without saying that it's a big giant caveat of if they're playing. But I always forget that Pat is he's the resident technical producer of this podcast, and we'll always hold Jeremy and I to account when we go assuming things like that. So my apologies, Pat.
I'm the optimist. I see nothing but clear skies ahead.
I think Jeremy and I just before the show were calling you Patty Sunshine. I think that was the conversation that we had.
It's the brand. Yeah. That's always. We mentioned the Arizona Diamondbacks as a team right on the cusp of that final playoff spot. The Cubs are in Arizona Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week to take on those Diamondbacks before coming home for a homestand 3 against the Reds on the weekend. And then the Brewers come to town as the calendar turns to September, and we see the Cubs play 4 games at home against the Brewers before going to Miami and then 3 more at the Brewers. So the 7 games against Milwaukee. So in September, this is a important stretch here against Arizona and Cincinnati. The Reds, good news, still bad. They're one of the teams that stayed bad and have been bad. 3-7 in their last 10, 62 and 69. So there's
appreciate them.
Yes, it's up to the Cubs have to have a successful. They can't be looking ahead to the Brewers and.
Lest we forget the Mariners lost 22-0 to Milwaukee and then took 2 out of 3 from the Cubs. So
they did lose 19-2 to the Cubs. So there, Cubs are plus 15 in runs scored on the week.
There cannot possibly be another team that is lost by 20 runs and 17 runs within a 4-game span. It cannot have happened,
and
right?
500,
completely insane.
Let's talk predictions for the week. We'll take the 3 Diamondbacks and 3 Reds games. James, as our resident Diamondbacks expert here, I will turn to you for your thoughts on that series and your prediction for the 6 games.
See, for me, what it always comes down to is that the Cubs it feels like historically, every time they go to Chase Field, for whatever reason, the Diamondbacks always seem really up for that series. And I think that sometimes these things kind of get overblown because you have, it's a narrative or whatever. But I think the reality is the Diamondbacks legitimately get irritated that Cubs fans are so boisterous in Arizona, and I do feel like it gives them a little kind of extra edge. But when you look at the pitching matchups coming up for this series, I feel like having Clay Holmes in that middle matchup on Tuesday is going to be huge. I really do think that Monday will finally be the day that Kevin Gossman is able to do literally anything positive. So I am going against my initial instinct with that series and saying they'll win 2 out of 3, and I think they'll win 2 out of 3 against Cincinnati as well. I just think that it's so hard at this point in the season when guys are so gassed and you haven't been able to expand your roster yet to give guys any really additional rest. I just feel like it's so hard to sweep a team, even if they're playing as poorly as the Reds are. So I'm going to go with a 4-2 record, and that's going to be 2 out of 3 against each of those teams. And by the way, I would fully expect PCA. You know what? I'm going to make a really bold prediction. I think PCA gets an inside the park home run at Chase Field this week.
Nice. I like it. Pat, 4-2, Mr. Sunshine, optimism. What do you think about this 4-2 prediction?
I find it foolhardy. I think the Cubs, I see this as a 3-3 week. Hopefully, most optimistically, that's my my best case scenario. And if Gausman loses to Kelly in the opener, there's a chance the Cubs go 1-5. Rodriguez is a really good pitcher. If you haven't seen him yet, and Fat with Pfaadt, I call him Fat. I always think the P must be like fake, right? Or is it Pfat? I don't know. Has pitched really well finally, now that he's several seasons removed from my fantasy baseball team. The other problem is, so I need Gausman to pitch well. He has 2 starts. He better pitch well in that first one, because in the last start, the Cubs are going up against Chase Burns from Cincinnati, and that guy's a stud. Everybody talks about Mizorowski. Chase Burns is my guy. I really like him, and unfortunately, he's really good. I do think Peterson can beat Louder. I think now Imanaga versus Abbott is going to be tricky because, well, Abbott is meh. He seems to pitch well against the Cubs historically, and
annoyingly, so yeah.
And Imanaga against the Reds, I just hope the wind's not blowing out. So I think the Cubs are going to cobble together 3 wins out of this series. They're going to win the first game against Arizona, the first game against the Reds, and hopefully the second game against the Reds. But if things go poorly in that first game, I could see the wheels coming off, and I could see the Cubs going 1-5 and having the Diamondbacks be right on their heels, basically. I mean, they're only, 4 games back right now. The Cubs really can't afford to get swept. Could they lose 2 out of 3? Sure. If they win 2 out of 3, as James is hoping for, yeah, then that'd be great, because that, you will start looking at the calendar and you're like, okay, well, there are fewer and fewer games left. Plus, the Cubs would have the tiebreaker then. That's another key, right? They got to win 2 out of 3 for the tiebreaker. So, what do you think?
For me, the Diamondbacks series is harder to predict, so I'll tell you my thoughts on the Reds first. I think that
well, actually, they swept Arizona the first time, didn't they? So they only need to win 1 game for the tiebreaker, technically. If they win 1 out of 3, they will lose a game in the standings, but they'll make it back up in the tiebreaker. So there you go.
I think the Cubs and Reds, while the Reds do have good starting pitchers, as you mentioned, they do have the Reds bullpen, who is going to come in, and they also have the Reds defense, who continue to do Reds things. So I do think the Cubs take 2 of 3 against the Reds. One of those is a Sunday night game,
and they can't really hit that well. There was a time when they were a really good hitting team.
No, and so I do think they easily take the 2 of 3 against the Reds.
I mean, that'd be great.
I can easily see them only getting 1 in Arizona. But I'm going to try to be optimistic here, and I'm going to say that they're going to take 2, and it'll be a 3-3 week for the Cubs. I
wish I lived in fantasy land like you guys.
I was going to say, I'll be Jimmy optimist here. That's fine with me, man. Like I'm totally down for that.
I would like it to be 4-2. I'd like that. They could easily do 2 of 3, and then they're a 4-2 week for me.
And I did throw the qualifier out there that I know how this team typically plays in Arizona, and it's always so weird. Wasn't it 2024? Didn't they get swept in Arizona, like as they kind of swooned?
Oh, yeah, cost them a playoff spot.
It sure did. Yeah. In September. Yeah, just terrible. And then next week here on the podcast, we will recap that week, and we will preview all of the Brewers games coming up. So we will.
You guys are going to have some interesting scheduling to do, considering they've got the Sunday night game, and then they play Milwaukee on Monday. You guys are going to have to kind of figure that out.
Yes.
I'm going to be at the game on Monday, so I really have to figure that out.
I will actually also, I will be at the first game of the Milwaukee series as well, Pat, so I might say hi to you.
Oh, nice.
That'd be a change of pace. Yeah, that'd be great.
You know what? To be fair to me, like those tickets to the game on my birthday were completely insane, and I had a lot of fun going to a Chicago Dogs game instead. And I'm pretty sure even after merchandise and buying way too many hot dogs and beers, I still came out ahead financially.
Oh, no doubt.
Oh yeah, 100%. We are going to close this week's show the way we do every week here, and that's having Pat take us back in time we look at this. We try to guess the lineup. Both James and I will guess the lineup from this day in Cubs history.
Is
what
there like
year?
special music or something that gets played with this?
I should have a theme song.
I think you should.
But problem is we're always up against time. We don't have time for that here. We have so much fun talking.
Have
about
ChatGPT do it. It'll be fun.
Pat, tell us what year we're in for today's lineup.
All right. We are going, since the Cubs are going to be a 92-win team this year, we're not going back that far in history. 9 years, back to August 23rd of 2017. Cubs were 68-57, and they went on to win 92 games. They went red hot to finish the year. This is the year they got Quintana at the All-Star break and never looked back until they faced the Dodgers in the NLCS. A fate the Cubs may face this year. On this day, the Cubs beat the Cincinnati Reds. 9-3. Cincinnati Reds had Asher Wojciechowski pitching, giving up 8 runs in 3 2/3 innings. That's what I'd like to see this week from the Reds.
Absolutely.
One sort of Mark Grace level Hall of Famer on the Reds on that team. Really the best player they've had since Barry Larkin left, probably.
Joey Votto.
I'm assuming Joey Votto, yeah.
Joey Votto, yeah.
I thought maybe he was giving Brandon Phillips some credit, but I was like, no, that's not what he's saying.
No. The Cubs starter this game, interestingly, went 6 shutout innings, lowering his ERA to 3.43, was the World Series star pitcher from Game 7. Who recorded 1 out, but a very important out.
Mike Montgomery, I would assume.
Mike Montgomery
right?
was the starter,
Wow.
yes.
Yeah, at that point in the year, I think the Cubs had kind of run into a little bit of rotation stuff, and he had come back into the rotation. Yeah, that was the year Davis and pitched his arm off. So at least
they had a 92-win team. I forgot just how many injuries they had that year. You're right. Justin Wilson came in to pitch. Koji O'Hara came in, and to mop up was Hector Rondon. Who pitched the 9th inning of a 9-0 game and gave up 3 runs to raise his ERA to 5.03.
Goodness.
Hector was no longer the Hector of 2015 at this point. The Cubs lineup was I don't know how this team won 92 games and finished the year so hot, because you look at this team and you're like, good God, this was not the Cubs 2016 lineup that I remember. Leading off and playing center field this year. Remember, they had lost Dexter Fowler at this point, so he was with the Cardinals by now. Do you remember who the big free agent acquisition the Cubs made that offseason?
I was going to sarcastic. I was going to say, is it John Jay?
It is John Jay.
Oh my God! I was like, I literally, I was like, okay, it's when you said sarcastically, like, and then it was like, yeah, I think that has to be John Jay.
John Jay.
That was nightmare fuel.
Lead off batting center field. The number 2 hitter. Yeah, this guy, future Hall of Famer, would have been nice to have him this year on the team.
Jeimer Candelario.
Nope. This guy drove in 3 runs in the game. His batting average was a little bit low, but you know what? His OPS was pretty high because he walked and hit a lot of home runs, including in this game. He hit his 21st home run of the year on August 23rd.
Was that a Contreras game?
Nope. This guy is a future Hall of Famer.
Kyle Schwarber?
Yes.
Yeah.
Batting second.
I was trying to figure out, I was like, I don't think he's being sarcastic, but I don't know.
No, that's why, because I was leaning. I was like, is Chris Bryant's playing? And then your future Hall of Famer. And I'm like, okay.
I was like, okay, no, even he wouldn't make that joke.
Oddly, in the 3rd hole, playing second base on this team, World Series MVP. I think he was the MVP.
Yeah, Ben Zobrist.
Yep,
Ben Zobrist
playing second base.
Yeah. Who, by the way, was not having a great season in 2017 at this point.
Was this
678
the
OPS.
year that all the stuff happened with he and his wife, or was
I think
that?
so. Yeah, this year or the next year, but he was. He was.
Oh, so weird.
He had peaked the year before. She's back in the news, by the way.
Yes.
Isn't she? I thought
Google
I saw
her.
that she's dating some influencer or something now, isn't she?
Who knows? But she's in the news. Check her out. Check out her story.
I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and take a pass, and instead,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna think about her wonderful rendition of Benny and the Jets.
Yes. Batting cleanup on that team.
By the way, he took the leave of absence in 2019.
Okay,
May of
God.
2019.
Yeah. Well, batting cleanup on this team. A Cub, I would call him a legend. If they were to build a statue of the 2016 team, he'd be one of the 3 or 4 guys you would definitely have to have on it.
Jason Hayward.
No, not quite. This guy was batting cleanup. He had a 908 OPS.
Rizzo,
yes.
Yeah.
The catcher in this game, but boy, this guy was not a catcher on the 2016 team. He was not a Montero. He was not a Contreras. He was not a David Ross. He was the catcher the Cubs acquired in a midseason trade with the Detroit Tigers.
He was part of that Justin Wilson trade?
Yes, he was.
Year, wasn't it?
Yes, he was.
For the Avila year that they had him for what, like a day and a half?
That was it. Yep. Alex Avila.
Had an 874 OPS. Most of it was with the Tigers, but at this point,
Candelario went to Detroit, and we got Avila and Justin Wilson.
Yep. Justin Wilson, who had a much better 2018, but it didn't matter by then because we needed him in 2017. He was the Jefferson of 2017. Sadly,
God, we're gonna have to come up with even more nicknames for this guy now.
I know. Batting in the 6th hole, guy hit a home run, drove in 3 runs, had a 906 OPS. The pride of New Jersey itself.
Tommy LaStella.
Utility infielder. Yes, Tommy LaStella.
Oh, 3 a.m.
Yeah.
There you go. God, I missed that
guy. And then, of course, batting 7th, our $200 million.
What position was Tommy LaStella playing?
Third base.
Third base, okay.
Because Bryant was hurt.
Yeah.
And then our $200 million player in right field.
Mr.
Holding onto the 7 hole. Yeah. Hayward. Batting 8th that year, even though he had an 804 OPS and was a year away from being the 2nd place finisher in the MVP award, I think.
Wow.
Playing shortstop.
Talk about a glow up for Javier Baez, man.
I know, right?
He just exploded the year after that.
He was batting 8th this year. Yeah.
Utterly nuts how quickly that changed for him.
And then, of course, we had Montgomery.
Surprised it wasn't a pitcher batting 8th.
Right. Playing that old game.
Well, it's mostly wasn't that Madden's first year. He mostly did that. It didn't feel like he did that as often after 2015, where he had a pitcher batting 8th. It's like he moved away from it because I don't think he had a guy that he really liked batting 9th after that first year. So who knows?
And then in the 9 hole, Montgomery left at one point and was pinch hit for by the World Series pinch runner MVP.
Mr. Almora.
Albert Almora, yes.
Nice.
So listen to this lineup. This is a lineup on a team, admittedly, they were 68 and 57, but they were going to go on to win 92 games. So they're going to finish the year 24 and 12, right? This is the lineup they were throwing out. John Jay, Kyle Schwarber, Ben Zobrist, shell of himself, Anthony Rizzo, Alex Avila, Tommy LaStella, Jason Hayward, Javi Baez, with Mike Montgomery on the mound. All right. I feel like the Cubs' current lineup is better than that, right? So
no Hap in this game either.
No, Hap. It was Hap's rookie year, wasn't it? 2017.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah. No Hap on this team, or on this in this lineup, I should say. And it was just Bryant was hurt. There was just a lot of Contreras was not playing. David Ross was gone at this point, right? So the Contreras was sort of, if you had to look at who the main players were time-wise that year, Contreras was a catcher. Addison Russell, got a lot of playing time that year. Of course, Chris Bryant, when he was healthy. Almora got more playing time than I remembered. Ian Happ did come up that year and had an 842 OPS. It pretty well, in 115 games. Miguel Montero was there at the beginning of the year, and then they let him go, right? I think that was the thing. But Matt Caesar was on that team, one of your favorites, Strick.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
The Cubs beat the Cubs went 5 games against the Nationals before then losing the NLCS.
Well, because of that stupid rainout where they weren't going to be able to pitch what's his name?
Strasburg.
Strasburg. I kept saying Salzburg in my mind. I'm like, no, that's too German.
And so they won the game, right? Yeah. And then they made the Cubs play 30 games in 30 days or something?
Yeah. Yeah, the Strasburg thing, so he could pitch an extra game, and then finally we won Game 5. And actually, I think none other than it was like the bases were loaded, and the Cubs had a 1-run lead, and Harper was at the plate, and Wade Davis closed him out. Wade Davis had a great year that year for the Cubs.
And then he basically blew his arm out in the last game of that series, and then basically did nothing for the rest of his career after that. It kind of broke him because he got the big deal with the Rockies, and it was a complete disaster.
It's kind of sad. He had 2.30 ERA, 32 saves, pitched really well for the Cubs.
Big deal in Rockies. That's redundant when it comes to being a disaster.
Has there ever been a major deal for the Rockies that hasn't ended in complete disaster? It feels
Every single one is.
How does the Mike Hampton deal? How does that feel to you? Not great.
Comparatively better than the Arenado deal or the Wade Davis deal or who else did they give big?
How did they not get Anthony Rendon? I still don't understand. That seems like such a
such a
perfect move for them.
Yeah.
Because the Angels insisted on getting Rendon and Albert Pujols, and we all saw how that worked out.
Yeah. Well, always a great time to take a trip down memory lane, and especially talking about 2016 adjacent things like the 2017 Cubs. Always fun. And we'll be back next week to talk more about the current Cubs and this year's playoff push. James, thank you for joining us this week. Please remind our listeners how they can find your work on the internet.
Anything that I write is on NBCChicago.com. Just literally before we started this podcast, wrote up the story that the Cubs are playing the Blue Jays in the Little League Classic next year. Covering the Cubs, covering the White Sox. I'll be doing Bears content here coming up, and then just anything else they asked me to do. And then check me out on Blue Sky and on Instagram. Instagram is a lot of ballpark stuff. I was telling the guys earlier, I've been to a few new stadiums this year and finally got to go to the Field of Dreams. So it's been interesting times over there on the old IG account. So be sure to check it out.
You can follow us on all the social media platforms at Wrigleyville Nat. We want to thank our patrons over at patreon.com/WrigleyvilleNation. It's how we continue to not have to read ads to you on the podcast. You'll get ads at the beginning and at the end of the podcast, of course, but we won't stop and read ads because of our patrons over at patreon.com/WrigleyvilleNation. And if you want to support the show, you can go there to support the show. And but another great way to do it is to go to our store and buy merchandise, T-shirts, hats, mugs, all kinds of stuff to support the podcast. Every single penny goes back into the show. And you can also support the show for free by going to our YouTube channel where the video version of this podcast is. Likes and subscribes over there helps us work the algorithm so other Cub fans can find the show. Easy, free way to support the show. You can also tell your Cub fan friends about the show, show them how to subscribe to a podcast. Another great, easy, free way to support us. We really appreciate it. And all the links I described, the entire back catalog of the podcast, everything's available over at the website, WrigleyvilleNation.com. And with that, we're going to wrap it up and call it a podcast. Pat, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks again, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.